What have I been reading? Let's talk about it. This is kind of like a mid-month update, but also second half of August as well. Around the end of August, I went on a 3-week motorcycle trip through the States. So I'm here near Toronto, Canada, and I went down to Utah, and then I came back up, and that was really awesome. Um, and it turns out that I actually had a lot of time for audiobooks because, when you're barreling down the twisties in the Appalachian Mountains, that's not a good time to listen to an audiobook. But when you're sitting on your motorcycle and you're slogging through an Oklahoma highway for 10 hours straight, that's a great time to listen to an audiobook because it keeps you awake, keeps you interested, keeps you alert. So that's what I was doing, and got through a lot of audiobooks in that way, in that sense, and they just really added so much richness to the experience of my trip. And at the same time, I've been trying really hard to get at least an hour of physical reading in every day. This is something I was struggling with for a long time when I was writing my books. Is I just it just wasn't in the headspace to read physically, but I've been feeling a lot better about it. I've been really enjoying my reading, and I've been wanting to do more than an hour. So trying to find that balance between writing and reading is always one of the tricky things for authors. But so we're just going to go ahead and talk about some of the things I've been reading, and I've been having just an absolute blast. So the first thing, around the end of August, right at the start of my trip, I started The Lies of Locke Lamora, so The Gentleman Bastards. And you talk about a book where you go into the book with these sky high expectations because all you've heard are good things. And it proceeds to absolutely blow all your expectations out of the water, even though the hype was like, it was so hyped up. And it's one of those things where I tend to, when books are overhyped, I tend to be very skeptical, not because I think they're going to be bad, but because I don't want to like overhyped books because I'm just very contrarian in that sense, and it sucks, and I hate that part of myself. But it's kind of by nature, right? But The Lies of Locke, man, it was so freaking good. I went in expecting, okay, there's going to be good banter, there's going to be camaraderie. These are the things people talk about. What I didn't expect was that it would also be so tightly plotted with so many twists and turns and this constant tension where you're like, geez, how are these guys going to get out of this situation? Because, you really become attached to the characters. I personally love the non-linear narrative style that was used. I loved Camor. It was such a vivid, vibrant setting. And I genuinely think, like, I'm not joking around, I genuinely think The Lies of Locke has to be one of the best books written in the last 20 years. So, following The Lies of Locke, I actually was alternating with another series, but we'll just talk about The Gentleman Bastards for now. So, I went ahead and somehow just binged through Red Seas Under Red Skies and The Republic of Thieves. So, talking about book two, Red Seas Under Red Skies, what an awesome continuation. I know that people say it's not as good as The Lies of Locke, and I think they're right. It's not quite as tightly plotted. There's a couple of threads that start up in this book where they don't really go anywhere. Um, and there's a couple of small things. The ending felt a little bit rushed. It's not quite as perfect, but you still have the heart of the story, which is that relationship between the gentleman bastards. You still have just this incredible dialogue, just the prose. Like Scott Lynch is an absolute genius at his wordplay, and it's like his style is so compelling, and I just loved listening to the way he was like writing sentences, putting them together, and then just the interactions with characters. They're always so vivid. And in Red Seas Under Red Skies, around the second half of the book, like I loved it from the start. Like literally the moment it started, I was like, yes, we are back and I'm so on board. But the second half of the book, specifically when they reached the Poison Orchid, that's all I'm gonna say, that's when it really took off. And there's some new characters introduced, there's some seriously gut-wrenching moments. Locke and Jean, their relationship in this book was peak. It was just like the best brotherhood I have ever read. And then we went on to The Republic of Thieves, which I think is probably the most controversial of the three. And this was also just an easy 5-star read for me. I smashed through this. I was meant to buddy read this with Ben, but I was like, I didn't even give him a chance. I could not put it down. And I think Republic of Thieves was the weakest book, without a doubt. I think the plot was the least enticing. There were the least amount of twists and stuff. But really, I found The Republic of Thieves to be maybe my favorite love story that I've ever read. Like, genuinely, I did not think that's how it would go down, but that's how it kind of turned out because I don't know, man. It's just Sabbath and Locke and like their history and the flashbacks in Republic of Thieves. I think were better than the flashbacks in Book Two. I loved it. I think it was brilliant. And now it sucks because now I'm waiting for Book Four. But you know what? I'm happy to wait if as long as the quality is like this good. Like I'm happy to wait. Gentle and Bastards vaulted into my top five series really fast, and I honestly can't wait to reread it, which is like a feeling I've not had for such a long time. So, moving on from those awesome, awesome books, what I was reading in between each book, so I was like alternating. This is what I usually do with trilogies: is I'll start two trilogies at the same time, and then I'll read book one of both trilogies, and then book two. You know, like kind of alternate between them. So in between the Gentleman Bastards, I was reading the Mortal Techniques um, Heroic Age trilogy by Rob J. Hayes. So starting with Never Die, and then going on to Pawn's Gambit and Spirits of Vengeance. So Never Die, I thought, was such a great introduction to this world, which, you know, it's like this very anime inspired, very Asian feeling um, setting, but it's just this really tightly plotted story where it just felt like the action never really stopped. But at the same time, you had these really interesting characters, and every single moment in the story was really tightly entwined, and I really appreciated that. Like I liked Never Die a lot. I liked Pawn's Gambit even more, even though I think Pawn's Gambit was much slower paced, especially the first half. The second half, Pawn's Gambit took off, and like it was awesome, and there were some great revelations. I just thought that Pawn's Gambit was a more interesting character study. I enjoyed the characters a little bit more. There was a little bit more depth to them. I do think the writing in Pawn's Gambit was a bit less polished. However, overall, I just enjoyed the story more than Never Die. And then Spirits of Vengeance improved and took the best parts of both of those books and just combined them together into this awesome story with so much depth and so much um, such great characterization with moments that were just gut wrenching and sad, and then just this awesome coming together of everything that's happened in this world. Like I really enjoyed this trilogy, and I would recommend it to everyone. And it sucks because now Rob J. Hayes has like a billion other books that I'm so keen to read on. I say it sucks. It's actually awesome, and I'm really looking forward to it. So, other than that trilogy, what I read next was Within the Sanctuary of Wings, and that is Lady Trent number five. And this made me really sad because I love the Lady Trent books. I don't think they're for most people, to tell you the truth. I think they're a very unique set of books. There's five of them, and I feel like people have expectations of like it's not quite cozy, but it's also not quite like a normal fantasy story. It's really hard to describe the Lady Trent books, but she herself, like Lady Trent, is just such a colorful character, and so for me they are cozy because I just enjoy spending time with her. And book number five might have been my favorite. I really liked books three, four, and five, and they're all just like you're there to see what shenanigans Lady Trent gets up to, and then what comes out of it. And I really like that. I think book five, we start getting more into archaeology, so that's one of those things where I'm not sure if it's for everyone, but I really recommend people try it out and they kind of go into it as like an easy read, a low stakes, cozy um, thing, and you might end up enjoying it. So I was kind of sad when it ended because it's like I need more Lady Trent in my life, and there's a bit of a void there, and I don't know what's going to fill that. I genuinely have no idea what book can replace the Lady Trent series. Like, if you have any suggestions, please shoot them my way, because I'm looking. Um, so those were most of the audiobooks that I did. I was also reading physically on my ebook, The Last of the Atlanteans by P.L. Stewart. So this is an interesting one. So I loved A Drowned Kingdom, and the way A Drowned Kingdom ended, it was like, wow, okay, yeah, we have to know what's going to happen next, because P.L. Stewart, man, he hooks you and then he keeps you there. And one of my favorite things about P.L.'s writing is just his prose. He's got this wonderful way of just writing with this, um, with the archaic sense that you want out of a story with this kind of setting, right? Like, if you've not heard of A Drowned Kingdom, the premise is similar to Atlantis, right? There's this great kingdom which was basically like the most powerful kingdom of its time, and they looked down on everyone else. They were colonizing people, they were conquering left, right, and center, and they were on an island. And the premise is that that kingdom, there's a volcano, things happen, the kingdom gets drowned, as it turns out, drowned kingdom, and now we're looking at the last of the people from that kingdom, and these are the last of the Atlanteans. So now these people are suddenly, they find themselves refugees on another land, surrounded by people that they had looked down on, right? Like these are the Atlanteans are just inherently, by their culture, very racist and superior. And now they are at the mercy of people who they had looked down on. And it's such an interesting premise, and there's this huge cultural clash going on, and we witness it all through the eyes of Othran, who is uh, the second prince of this kingdom, but now he's like the highest ranking noble. And Othran is, I think, a very controversial character because, you're in a first person POV of a character who embodies his culture. Like he is the quintessential Atalantean, which means he's racist. He feels very superior. He's very arrogant, but he has a lot of redeeming qualities as well. He's got so much agency, and he's got like this sense of virtue and honor, and um, he does kind of win you over, to be honest. Like at least for me, I don't think that he's nearly as bad as people say he is. At least from what I've heard, I think I've read far worse characters in grimdark books. I think Othman has a lot of redeeming qualities you can get behind, and by the end of book two, I was like, I'm on board, man. Like I want to see how you change. I want to see your journey, and I want to see the journey of these people. Book two was it had some really intense moments. P.L. Stewart writes a great battle scene, and there were plenty of those. There was a lot of political intrigue. I think political intrigue is the heart of this story. If you like political fantasy, you really should read The Drowned Kingdom. I recommend it highly. The books are excellent. I cannot wait to get into book three. And yeah, like PL, please stop being so good, man. So after The Last of the Atlanteans, I read Tangleweed and Waterbloom. So this is a self-pub fantasy by an author named Justin Greer. It is a little bit obscure, I should say, but I really wish that more people would read this because I think Justin is such a talented author. Tangleweed and Waterbloom. So this is part of his Garden Knight series, and the Garden Knight series, it's kind of an interesting premise where essentially there's just a gardener, and this guy is like, his age is never defined, but I imagine him to be in his 40s, and he lives in this village called Haverdale, and he just gardens. He's like a village gardener, and he's a very wholesome guy. He lives there with his dog, and he just gets tangled up in these weird things because there's some weird plants. Like these weird plants start messing around in the capital city, and the king sends a knight to fetch this gardener, and be like, can you come here and figure out what's going on with my plants? And the story goes from there. And it sounds very strange. However, I find that Justin's writing is just so cozy and homey. Like you just sink into it and you sit, and it feels like, it just feels very, I can't think of a better word than cozy, but like you just enjoy it so much without any high stakes, right? Like it's easygoing, you sink into the world. His prose is gorgeous. Justin knows how to write beautiful descriptions. And then if you are a very visual reader, I think you will love these books because he just has a way of describing those little things in life, and you enjoy those little moments that Derry and his dog Barrow are having with their villagers. But at the same time, there's all these little hints of like, oh, there's something ominous going on. Like there's something wrong with these plants, and like, oh God, what's going to happen there? And that just starts to ramp up throughout the story. And the book Tangleweed and Waterbloom is actually book one. I've read the prequel novella, which is where I suggest you start. You can get that for free on Justin's website. In book one, the plot really took off. Like it got pretty intense, and I was like, wow, I wasn't expecting that. And it became like a proper heroic fantasy, And like imagine your main POV character is a wholesome older gardener who is just a good guy, and he's just trying his best to like live his simple life, but he's getting tangled up in other things. And yeah, I highly recommend the Garden Knight series by Justin Greer. After that, I'm just looking at my notes. I listened to Sins and Sorrows. This was book 1.5 of the Protectors of Britannia series by Mike Molman. Um, I thought this was an interesting deviation from the original from book one, where we follow. It's essentially a collection of short stories and I guess two longer stories. So I thought it was interesting. I am keen to get back to the Grammy story, which is I think the main story. So yeah, I'm just excited, looking forward to book two. I don't think I have too much more to say about book 1.5 there. So what am I reading right now? So I started, well, I'm around 60% through The Legend of Tao by JDL Russell. So I'm immersion reading this one, and it is so good. I just love, I'm a sucker for good prose, and JDL Russell, similar to these other indie authors I mentioned, like both Justin Greer, JDL Russell, and P.L. Stewart, these guys are such good writers, man. Like I wish they got a bit more recognition for just how pretty their prose is and how beautifully they write. And JDL is, he's writing very much classic fantasy. And when I'm reading something like that, I need the prose to suck me into the world. I needed to have that feeling of classic fantasy, and he nails it perfectly. It's like you can tell this guy was influenced by, the greats like Tolkien and maybe some Robert Jordan in there. I'm not sure. Um, but yeah, I'm really enjoying the story, and I can't wait. I can't wait to finish it. I'm excited that there's a lot more books in this series that I can get to. I am also listening to The Gates of Fire. So this is a historical fiction book that I started, and to be honest, I'm kind of struggling with this one. I'm about halfway through it as well, and it's a really well written book. Like there's so many things I appreciate about it. I just don't think there's any characters. Like I haven't latched on to the characters at all. It's just really interesting that like the historical parts about it, the battle scenes are super well written. But I'm going to see how it goes. I think I'll push through, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I have high hopes of this one. I think it's an excellent book. It just might not be for me. So if I can get through Gates of Fire, the next thing I'm going to listen to is Asunder. This one is an Esme special. She's been shouting about it from the rooftops, and I have promised I will give it a listen and comment on how it goes. And I'm excited about it. I literally have no idea what to expect. I've got no clue, and I like going into books blind like that. So I'm excited for that one. And then yeah, for my next physical read, I'm not sure. I am going to continue with PL series. So I just have to figure out when I'm gonna slot that in, or what else I do first. And that's my update. This is all I'm trying to do this all in one take, because if I have to do a lot of editing, I'm probably not gonna make many videos. But we're gonna give it a shot. And that's that.